Welcome to the Men Refine podcast. In this episode, we are bringing to you part 1 of a 2-episode conversation with my friend David Frush. I hope this episode encourages you as much as it did to me. And if it does, would you mind sharing this episode with someone else? It will mean the world to me. Like, follow, and subscribe to the Men Refine podcast anywhere you consume your podcast. And now, enjoy this episode.
Briley, our middle child, randomly developed an allergy to the entire state of Texas, basically. So she was sick all the time. We tried everything, everything, every medical treatment, every natural treatment, nothing was working. And her allergist actually suggested to Susan at one of their appointments moving, specifically to the Denver area, because what she is allergic to in Texas is not predominant here.
This is the Men Refined podcast.
Hey friends, welcome to the Men Refined podcast. Today I have my good friend David Frush. David, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, I want to dig in right into it. I would like to introduce you, but also I wanna leave a space so you can really speak into people's lives. And if you can expand and tell us a little bit about your story. Now, when I mean your story, I really want to go into what you've been doing for the last 20 years of your life, right? How do you grow up and how do you became who you were until about a couple of years?
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in Texas.
Good old boy, Texas. Texas boy, huh?
Born and raised in Texas, although I'm about as un-Texan as you can get, probably. But yeah, I grew up there in a Christian home. My parents set the example of faith for me. So we grew up in church, very involved. And we were a sports family. So also a big part of our lives was dedicated to sports, and all of them. I have 2 older brothers, so I was the youngest, and felt like I had to, definitely grow up competing against them.
Always, right?
Yeah. And and then my mom's a piano teacher as well. So being the youngest, my older brothers got to quit. When it was my turn around, she was like, "You have no choice."
When did they quit?
Yeah, I don't remember, honestly. Maybe middle school, high school. I don't know that they very early. Yeah, I don't know that they stuck with it through high school. I don't remember. But yeah, for me, she was like, one of my boys is going to stick with it. But I always was musical. I sang a lot as a kid, and different plays and things like that, and sang in church all the time. So it wasn't like a abnormal thing, but, and I enjoyed it. So I'm thankful for it, because eventually it led to me, developing a career in music, through ministry. I had some time as a recording artist and songwriter, lived out that dream, and found out very quickly that my heart was not on the road. It was in investing in a community of people and a community of believers. So I kind of walked away from that and went into full-time ministry, started in student ministry and worship, and kind of had multiple jobs that different churches over the years that kind of did both of those jobs before really settling in on, okay, I want to do worship full-time, be a worship pastor. So.
How many church have you worked? How many church have you ministered on as in the worship team?
Okay.
Wow. Do you have to really think? Is that
I've never really thought of that before, so I never counted them. So
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
My home church, First Baptist Abilene.
Okay.
I don't know. I won't count the interim positions and things like that.
Why not?
I've had a lot of those. I don't even know if I remember all of those. So we'll go with full-time positions.
Okay.
So it was,
sounds good.
My home church in Abilene, First Baptist Church, Abilene, Texas.
Let's go Baptist, right?
Yeah, it was Texan.
Of course.
So, yeah. So that's where I grew up. My student minister actually hired me pretty much the day after I graduated high school to be an intern and still lead the student ministry worship there. So that was my first job. And then after that, I started at school at Hardin Simmons, and then that's when opportunity came for traveling with music. And so it got to the point where all my professors were like, dude, like, we can fail you because you've missed so much school. Wow. Because I was traveling so much.
I see. And, how old were you at this time when you started traveling?
So freshman, sophomore year of college. Okay. So 18, 19.
Did you sing at prom?
Did I what?
Did you sing at prom?
At prom? No.
You didn't sing at prom?
No, I did not.
Just checking.
No, did not. But yeah. So that happened. That was, a couple of years, did the music thing. Went on tour, actually started with a label that the band Leland was also kind of the up and coming artist for at the time. And so did that. And then, just learned really quickly that I enjoyed it. It's something I always thought I want to do, but then just missed investing in people. It just was hard to invest in people when you're in front of a different group of people. Yeah, for sure. Every day, that you don't know, that you have no connection with. And it was cool to hear them say like, oh, we've connected to your song or whatever. And obviously that was a big blessing to hear when, people shared how my songs ministered to them. But that was it, in terms of the connection that was there. So I left that.
For how long you traveled?
I did that, gosh.
Do you remember?
It was a couple of years altogether, like in terms of full-time travel with leading for youth camps and things like that. And then, combined with actually being a signed recording artist. And so altogether it was a good couple of years, 2-3 years.
And you were young.
I was. And I actually at one of our shows, there's a family that came up to me afterwards from Texas. They're like, I realize this is a long shot, but we know you're from Texas. Our church is looking for a student ministry, like junior high youth minister and worship leader. Is that something you'd be interested in? I was like, yes.
There you go.
And so I didn't know these people. They just came up afterwards. And so I left that and took this job. And that was for First Baptist Church, another First Baptist Church, in Forney, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. And so went there, and that's actually where I met my wife. So I'm glad I took that job, although we did not connect then because I'm a moron. Everybody else saw it, but I didn't. Needed some more time to get there. But anyway, so I was there. And for a year, and then took another job at a church where one of my mentors was serving at, in the kind of the same position opened up there in the Dallas area. It was the Heights Church in Richardson, Texas. So that's 3 full-time.
I didn't know we were still counting.
We're still counting. And then from there, I haven't forgotten the question. I'm getting there. So then after that, I served at Watermark Church for a little bit, leading worship for the Porch Ministry, which is like a college young adults ministry that Shane and Shane lead for now. And then after that, I went to Lake Point Church, and I was there for 5 years. And after that, I did end up wising up and marrying Susan, my wife.
There you go.
So when that happened, I needed, Lake Point, most churches in Dallas are contract labor for worship leader positions. So I wanted to find a full-time position. It was full-time, but it wasn't salary-wise, and like benefit-wise and things like that. I see. And so took a job at a church in Mansfield, Texas, Walnut Ridge Church there. Was there for a couple of years. And then, unexpectedly lost my job there. It was a tough thing to go through. And ended up at a church plant after that. And I've lost count. I stopped counting. That's like 5 or 6, I think. Okay. And then after the church plant, I went into it knowing it was probably going to be a temporary thing, but the time frame, that was the fastest position that we could find. It was some of my friends that started a church from that I worked with them at Lake Point Church before. So went into it about 6 months into that position. They were just like, we can't pay your salary anymore. So I finished out the year there. And then after that, I took a break from church. It was just a lot of kind of up and down roller coaster. We moved a lot. Didn't really feel like we found home and community. And I just didn't want to put my family through the emotional toll of getting invested in a community and then, leaving. And because that's just kind of the way it was playing out.
Right.
So took a step back from church and ministry as far as serving in church and ministry. Went into contracting, started working for my cousin and uncle's roofing company, Precision Construction and Roofing. Susan and I started a home remodeling business, and then we ended up working for a real estate investment company. So we were kind of the Chip and Joanna of the business, where she was the designer. I was the general contractor for it. So we did that for a few years, and then, we're doing that. And then one of my mentors called me up. It was just like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm doing some contracting stuff. And he was like, no, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not fulfilling your calling and serving in church, using your gifts and abilities to lead worship? And I told him. He was like, well, I'm going to get you back in this, And so he works for a Slingshot Group consulting company that helps churches find positions. So he has, connections all over. There's a church in McKinney, Texas that needed an interim position. So he got me that position. And through that, God used that time there as a time of healing for me, to open my heart and mind up to the idea of full-time ministry and church work again. So that was the year and a half before coming here to Colorado. And so started that, served in that position until they hired someone. At the time, I didn't really want to, put my name in the hat for that position. And because I was still kind of, I don't know if this is...
You were trying it out.
Yeah, I don't know.
You were not sold out yet.
Yeah, so not necessarily that position, just the idea of full-time worship, ministry again. So,
why do you think was that? Why were you doubting or probably maybe the drain aspect? Ministry is not an easy thing.
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening, ministry is not that beautiful bubble that people think it is.
Yeah.
It's actually very stressful at times.
Yeah.
And it seems that there's a way that we carry.
Definitely.
Yeah, one of my pastors says that weight that you said that you carry, it's actually the souls that you are supposed to give an answer for.
Yeah,
once you meet your maker.
Yeah.
I was like, right?
Yeah.
It was the most profound thing that I ever heard.
Yeah.
First thing I met you, we were just in Colorado for about a year, and we started going to our current church now, and you showed up. People talk about you guys, about your family, and then you guys showed up pretty much. Yeah, it was. I think it was actually the same year that we started going to church. So you were like, we kind of like got in about the same time. And I know, it's not easy to move your family.
Yeah.
Across the states and stuff like that. So we connected and stuff.
Yeah.
But how did that came about? Did you actually wanted it to get out of Texas at this point?
We did,
before you came to Colorado?
Yeah, back
or when
back
that opportunity presented itself?
Going back to like the doubt and things like that, the hesitation in getting back into ministry. I will never forget the look on Trevor and Briley's face. Kaylee had just been born, our youngest, when I lost my job in Texas. And it was a church that we loved, community that we loved. And I will never forget, like, I just felt like I'd ripped their hearts out in two when I told them we had to leave.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, I can't do that to them again, And because ministry is such a different path, like you have to give all of yourself in it. And it's a family thing too. It's not just you that's on staff, it's your whole family.
That's right.
And so the emotional toll of that, it was just tough, and so I had a protective guard up of, I don't know if I want to put my family through that again, to risk that potential heartbreak, and so I started that interim position, and through that, that kind of joy came back in serving in that role, not just for me, but for my family as well. So after that, it did end up going back to Lake Point Church as a contracted worship leader, just rotating around to the different campuses, and did that still with all the contract, renovation stuff. And then Briley, our middle child, randomly developed an allergy to the entire state of Texas, basically. So she was sick all the time. We tried everything, everything, every medical treatment, every natural treatment, nothing was working. And her allergist actually suggested to Susan at one of their appointments moving, specifically to the Denver area, because what she is allergic to in Texas is not predominant here in this area. And so that happened the night before that appointment. I was looking at Slingshot's site, the consulting company that my mentor worked for, and saw a posting for the church that here with Calvary, and read the description and was like, I'm interested in this, but I didn't know if Susan would ever be open to the idea of moving. We had a rough time in Texas, I'm not gonna lie, and it just kind of goes in line with our story, and a lot of heartache and everything that went along with that, with the job loss, but also just family stuff and dynamics that were going on. Just with what my wife went through with her past, she was, married before me, and just went through a nasty, nasty situation and divorced. And it was a tough thing to go through. There was lots of heartache and heartbreak and hurt, and emotional toll and baggage that went with that. Our first 4 years of marriage was a legal battle for adopting Trevor, who came for that marriage. Thankfully, God allowed that to happen. So we wanted a fresh start. We wanted somewhere new. And so we were open to it. We had talked about moving before, not really out of state. And so Susan came to me very nervously. It was like, I think we should move. I was like, okay, we've moved a lot. We can do this. Where to? She was like, no, I think we should move out of state. I was like, oh, okay.
That's a different story.
Where to? Yeah. And she was like, I think we should move to Colorado. I was like, okay, have you ever been? No. Have I ever been? Yeah, twice when I was 4, always wanted to go, and so neither one of us really had any kind of connection here, but she told me why. And I was like, well, if you're really serious about it, I saw this job posting last night. She's like, yeah, give Robbie a call. And so I called my mentor, and he was like, dude, I think you'd love it. And I think you're a great fit. And so I applied, got a call, came out here, fell in love with it. Susan came out here, we fell in love with it. And then we brought our kids, and while we were here, I remember we went on a hike for 3 hours with our kids in Chautauqua. Didn't get very far because we were Texan and not used to the altitude.
It's a big difference
Apparently
in altitude.
It's an easy trail, but it didn't feel like it at that time.
I'm with you, man.
And so, so 3 hours was probably half a mile. I'm just kidding. I don't know how far it was. But we stopped and just kind of talked as a family, and we're just like, what do you think, kids? And we didn't say anything to Briley, but the whole time we're like, she's not getting sick. She's not sneezing. She's not having allergic reactions. But we didn't want to bring it up until then. And we were like, Briley, do you realize you've been outside for 3 hours and you're fine? And she just broke down in tears of joy. I was like, I can be outside here, And so it was just kind of okay, let's do this, and everybody was on board with it. Obviously it was a big change, but since that time, we've just seen how this is exactly where we needed to be. And God provided a community of believers and people and support group that at the time we didn't know we would need. And we always wanted it, you know, but after what we've been through this past year and a half, we know why we're here, you know, and everything that it took to get us to this point, to be open to moving out of state, away from our friends, away from our family, into a place where neither one of us had really even been before.
Right.
That's
where you don't have no family, right?
Exactly.
You don't have no relatives here. So that's a huge
it was a
leap of faith.
A big leap of faith, you know, and not knowing, like, you know, what if things fall apart, if the church, all those questions in terms of like my job and things like that, all those things were there, all those doubts were there. But we just felt this overwhelming sense of peace of this is where we need to be. And that wasn't just for me and Susan, it was in all of our kids too.
Yeah.
And they were all excited about it. And, you know, we were really nervous about that change for them, right? Because they're young.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how that would affect them, how they would deal with it, if it would be a positive or a negative, you know, if we get out here and then after the honeymoon phase wears out, they would be like, can we move back, you know? And, so those were big thoughts and things that we spent a lot of time thinking, praying through, speaking, you know, talking as a family, because we wanted it to be a family decision. We wanted to make sure that we were all on board with it, all okay with it. We all knew the pros and cons. We all knew the risks involved. Yeah. And we all wanted to take those, you know, take those risks. And, so we jumped ship, left Texas, and
that was which year?
2019.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know exactly what you're saying, because when we moved here, and our move was also a God thing. I mean, we were so involved in ministry, church planting, and we had our church family, our community. It's like that was the toughest thing for us to do, is to leave our community, our church. Yeah, it was tough. It was very difficult. And, you know, not having family here in Colorado, obviously, that adds another piece to the puzzle, because especially for my wife, she always been with her mom. We have family back in Miami. Yeah. So that was a huge leap of faith, especially for the kids. Our oldest was going into senior. So he was going to be a senior in high school when we moved. So that was even more challenging for him. And as parents, it's like, oh crap, who does that, right? Yeah. Who lives in the middle, right? Right when your kid is going to go into be a senior in high school. But you know what? God did it, and he had his best year ever, his senior year in here. So we're at peace now. 5 years already here, and we're still here. So you got your job in this local church, and you've been leading ministry there for quite some time. And then talk to us about adapting to a new community, a new city, right? Yeah. Culture, totally
not
different.
The Bible Belt. Yeah.
Not the Bible Belt. Culture is so different here. This is not the South, for sure. I will say people are pretty cold in here, per se, in a way. There's a sense of that, right? Yeah. I think people are more slow to move or to do things in this area. Versus the South. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Yeah. Right? And what happened?
Yeah, I think honestly the biggest environmental change for me was specifically the work environment that I was in. Yeah. Because I went from, you know, Lake Point is a massive church, and you know what you call mega church. I led a lot of those, you know,
fast paced.
Yeah, very
fast.
Very fast paced. Very, like just. Always, not necessarily I would say pressure, but just like an expectation to be at the top of your game all the time.
Right.
So yeah, it's a tough environment to serve and work in when you're at some of the largest churches in the nation. And so like Lake Point, Watermark, Prestonwood, you know, First Baptist Dallas, like all the big churches in Dallas, I led and served there in some way. If it wasn't a staff position, it was for youth events and, you know, or camps or special events, worship nights, praise, you know, prayer, gatherings, everything. And so, so leaving that mega church environment, coming to, a smaller church, for me, honestly, it was refreshing, just because it was, that, pressure that really, and I will say I put that pressure on myself in those positions. For sure. I didn't have a boss that was like, you've got to be professional, level musician all the time, every time, and or you lose your job. Like there wasn't that. It was just like this, like, oh wow, like I'm at this church, I need to be great, and so mentally it was a tough thing to kind of go through. And so coming here to a smaller church environment and outside of the Bible Belt, where it's not the norm to go to church, and,
definitely not.
And so, church itself just was completely different here, being on staff at a church was completely different here. There's a lot more relaxed environment. And so just that was a big change for me, leaving, but at the same time it was a refreshing change because it was a breath of fresh air. You're surrounded by people who are unchurched, who don't know the gospel, who it's not the norm to show up in church on Sunday. Now, granted, I will say a lot of those people that do that in Texas just go just to be seen.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's not like everybody there is a Christian too. It's a thing, right? It's like church there is like a place to see and be seen.
Absolutely.
And so, it has its own, things that come with that, but people still go, So here it's different. It's harder to get people to go. And so from that, the ministry, the outreach, the relational side of things, it takes a lot more effort to get people in the door here than it does in Texas, At least that's been my experience. So I felt like there was more ministry that was occurring here in terms of the pastoral side of my job, not just the music leading side of the job. Because it took that effort to build those relationships, meet people, get to know the community, get to know the people that are surrounding the church and the surrounding areas and the culture, which was drastically different from the Bible Belt in Texas.
Are you still adapting, or do you think that you guys have already adapted?
Yeah, I feel like we've adapted, but I still feel like there's things that you learn, and there's still like moments where it's like, wait, is this okay? Or this isn't how we used to do things, or this is new, like I would say, so I think it's an ongoing thing, but in terms of like being like comfortable here, like this is home for us, like
because it took us about 2 years for us to adapt and understand the culture, because the first 2 years was really shocking. We were trying to blend in or trying to get in the groups, and it's tough. I think we were too rough.
And it's a different experience for when you're moving. I would say it's a lot easier to get connected and meet people when you are on staff and you're in front of everybody, as the face of some ministry or whatever. And so I will say that, that part was helpful, because obviously I jump in as a worship pastor. And so right off the bat, have a built-in community with the worship team and people that serve on that, and the staff involved there. So I think I would say we probably adapted faster. The weird thing is we moved here 6 months before COVID started, and so it has not ever been a normal year since we've been here, which is crazy. Right. So so it's been a journey. Rafael, it has been a journey.
I know.
So
I know it has. And then everything is obviously going great, right? You guys move in here. You're leading a local church. Your family is, settled, quote unquote, happy. I want to make sure I put quotes, because what is happiness is not really what we're supposed to, but they're settled, right? You guys feel part of a community, and you're learning, you're adapting, you're growing. The church, the local church that we're part of now, has 3 campuses. So there's so much space and room to grow, to do things everywhere. Yeah. And then, a couple of years go by and your life changed.
Yep.
Your life did a 180 completely from one day to another.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So I guess it was 2 Christmases ago.
Yeah.
Led Christmas Eve services, which are my favorite services to lead. And it was great, loved it. A couple days later, came down with COVID. And that was the first time that I had gotten it.
That was January after 2020, right?
Yeah. So
2020 was COVID year.
It was.
And then it's early 2020. It was January 2021.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
2021?
I think so. Yeah. Because.
Well, 2022.
It's a year and a half ago. You can do the math.
2022 then.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was after we came back in person. So it was after.
Absolutely.
COVID, so it's 2022.
Well, 2021, I will say it was still kind of like a COVID year still, because it was an adapting year, 2022, right? Yeah. People were trying to go back to doing some sort of normal of whatever was normal before.
Yeah, I feel like those 2 years.
Those 2 years is
just were lost.
It's like a lot of cloud. That's cloud. I'm still trying to.
Who remembers that?
Somebody says COVID. I'm like, COVID what? What is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, 2022, early 2022.
Yes. So I got it Christmas Eve, which would have been 2021, I guess, is when I actually got COVID. Sick. But it wasn't until like the first week of January during Christmas break that I actually came down with it in terms of symptoms. So I got it. It was a mild case. Just felt like the flu, nothing major.
Yeah.
I got better, but never really felt better. So my COVID symptoms were gone. I was testing negative, but yet I just felt like something was off. And so then I got sick again. I developed bronchitis, and I just couldn't feel better and didn't really know what was going on. And instead of getting better, I just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then before I know it, I can't walk. I can't stand without passing out. I'm blacking out all the time. I'm falling. I'm can't think, can't function, lost all normal level of functionality. And doctors are just like, I have no clue what's going on with you. And so that kept getting worse. I kept developing more and more random symptoms. I would lose feeling and ability to move the left side of my body. I would just black out. I would be in extreme pain. I would have numbness and tingling throughout my whole body. Yeah, it was just weird stuff that was going on, and I was getting no answers for. So I went down this whirlwind of going from specialist to specialist and test to test, and eventually ended up with a neurologist that felt like I had MS, and that was triggered by COVID. And he felt like, that's what I was dealing with. So they began to test me for that. I went into MRIs and CAT scans, had ER visits, where I couldn't breathe. I felt like, I was having a heart attack. It was crazy stuff, couldn't move, literally could not move. My body just wouldn't work. It was just falling apart. The scariest thing is not knowing what's going on and not being able, you expect doctors to be able to tell you, this is what you're dealing with. They tested me for everything. Nobody could give you negative for everything. No one could give me any answers. And so this neurologist, did all the testing for MS. There were 3 rounds of testing that I did. And all 3 of them came back negative. And to that point, he literally goes, well, you don't have MS. I guess let's just see you in 6 months. And I was like, Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's all you're going to give me? Like, what do I have? Why am I feeling like this? What am I going through? And so, yeah, so I just was like, I'm going to be my own advocate, and I'm going to research, and I'm going to look up anything and everything that I can try to find out. And I started reading more and more about dysautonomia and how it can lead to it's a malfunction of the nervous system, and how it can commonly be misdiagnosed as MS and other symptoms like that. And, it wasn't just MS, it was lots of stuff that they were testing me for, but that seemed to be like the main kind of culprit based
because of your symptoms.
My symptoms,
right.
Yes. And so he was shocked. He was beyond shocked when we pulled up my MRI of my brain. He was expecting to see what they call MS lesions, which is basically just an attack on your brain. And that's what causes your body to just malfunction. And so there were some spots that were very small, but nothing that was like, this is it, it was just, let's keep an eye on these things, and continue to do testing. We'll retest you in 6 months. I was not okay with that. Cause meanwhile, I'm not working. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm like having bouts and days where like, I can't walk, and so it's like, I can't physically do anything. And symptoms, instead of getting better, just kept getting worse. And I kept developing new symptoms. And so like my list just grew, and grew and grew. And so once I, found stuff about dysautonomia, I started researching other specialists in the area that, that's what they kind of really focus on, a focal point. So I went to another neurologist, and it was a total God thing, because those specialist appointments take months to get in. And so I went ahead and scheduled the appointment, which was like 3 months away. And I just asked people, please pray. I need to get in. I need answers. I need to know what's going on. Meanwhile, my employer was still graciously paying my salary, which was incredible. And still kind of waiting to make any decisions, because I didn't have a diagnosis. We didn't know what was wrong with me,
Friends, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. In this episode, we brought to you part 1 of a 2-episode conversation with my friend David Frush. I hope this episode encourages you as much as it did to me. And if it does, would you mind sharing this episode with someone else? It will mean the world to me. Like, follow, and subscribe to the Men Refined podcast anywhere you consume your podcasts. God bless you.